Thank you all for being here this morning with the Vice Chairman Joe Crowley from New York and me, the Chairman of the Democratic Caucus, Javier Becerra. We can start on a number of subjects. We just finished a caucus meeting where we had our Democratic colleagues hear from the Secretary of the Treasury, Jack Lew. He gave us a report on what we can expect the President to tell us tonight in the State of the Union. And quite honestly, I think it's good. It's strong. It's all about action, about working together with Congress to get things done. And where Congress decides to go into this shutdown mode of shutdown politics, or if it tries to obstruct, then the President has determined that he should try to do what he can through his executive powers as President of the United States. And so I think most of us are all for the President doing everything he can to work with our colleagues here, Republicans and Democrats alike, in the House and the Senate, to get things done. But let's get things done. And where the President can get things done without having to worry about a do-nothing Congress, that's why he's President, and we want him to get things done. At the end of the day, this is all about security. Whether it's economic security, health security, it's about making sure that Americans feel like they and their family are protected against the cold winds, the harsh conditions that might arise from a recession or from the lack of health care, quality, affordable health care, or from not knowing the availability of a good school for your child who's done well in high school and ready to go to college. Security, economic security, health security, that's what it's about. So when the President says that he's going to try to work with Congress to increase the minimum wage to $10.10 an hour, we're with him. And when he says, well, if Congress doesn't want to act, if we have folks who are in shutdown mode or want to be obstacles to that, then he'll take action where he can as the executive to help make sure that people who work for federal contractors, people who get taxpayer money to do their work, to do their contracts, that those contractors will have to pay the minimum wage of $10.10 an hour to their employees. By the way, what does $10.10 an hour get you? Well, if you work an entire year, you're probably looking at something around $21,000. If you happen to have a family of three, you, a spouse, and a child, that barely gets you over the poverty level. And so to many of us, it's not just about economic security, which is critical. It's about rewarding work. Getting back to the days that I remember, where my father, who was a road construction worker most of his life, had about a sixth grade education, a mother who came from Mexico when she married my father at the age of 18, could still see their children go off and get a college degree. Where we rewarded my father for the work he did as a road construction worker, building those roads that we drive on today. We believed that if you worked hard, you should have a chance. We should get back to those days where we reward work. And so right now, many Americans, millions of Americans, are making less than $10.10 an hour. Many Americans are working and still having to go to the food pantry after work to make sure they have enough food to feed the family. I believe the President is talking about action in 2014 because that should no longer exist. We should reward work, and we should have economic security, health security for everyone. It's time for us to do the things that people expect us to do as a Congress. These games of shutdown politics should end. These days of using procedural votes to obstruct the ability of our country and our government to move forward should end. And we should let this economy launch. More than 8 million jobs created over the last 4 years, and we can build on that. All we have to do is work together to get it done. But one way or the other, we got to get it done. And I believe the President tonight will let us know that working with Congress, or if Congress wants, working without Congress, the President is going to get work done. We applaud him for that and look forward to it. And let me now yield to the Vice Chairman, Joe Crowley.
Thank you, Mr. Becerra. First, I want to thank Mr. Lew for Secretary Lew for coming this morning and reiterating what we've already heard, and that is that the President will not compromise on the debt ceiling. I think that was welcome news by our caucus this morning. The Republicans, once again, are trying to use every angle they can for concessions in one way or another, but in this case on the Affordable Care Act. And the president is trying to move the country forward. We have to stop, as we've been saying over and over again, these man-made fiscal cliffs, these man-made potential disasters. And I think the American people are tired of it, and they want to see the Congress stop using these tactics and get on and do the business of the country. We also know that later today, the Republicans will offer a bill that will move towards deteriorating the rights of women in our country. Once again, demonstrating what their agenda really is all about. Mike Huckabee last week had irresponsible and ridiculous comments at the RNC meeting where he said that Democrats think that women are helpless creatures whose only goal is for the federal government, Uncle Sugar, to provide birth control because they can't control their libidos. That's the type of irresponsible jargon that's being used by the Republican Party today, out of step with the American people, and certainly out of step with women in our country. So what we're looking forward to tonight by the president, we're excited about that. We know that he's going to set an agenda for this year. He's looking for a partner. The president is looking for a partner in this Congress. He's desperate for one, but he's also showing that if he fails to find one, he's willing to act in a legal way to help move the country forward. In this particular case on raising the minimum wage, as Mr. Becerra has so eloquently laid out for you and what that means. It's an opportunity for the members of Congress on both sides of the aisle to demonstrate where they stand in this country. Do they stand with special interests, or do they stand with providing an opportunity for middle-class security in this country? That's what this year is about. Whether or not Republicans will demonstrate whether they stand with the special interests or strengthening the security of the middle class. And lastly, I just want to point out, you know, we've heard all this about how the Affordable Care Act has been a job killer. Speaker Boehner, being the lead cheerleader here on this particular aspect, and said that the Affordable Care Act will kill jobs. Well, nothing could be further from the truth. In fact, we've had 46 consecutive weeks of private sector job growth in this country since the day the president signed the Affordable Care Act, entirely counter to everything that has been said about the Affordable Care Act. It is not a jobs killer. It's providing health care security for millions of Americans, and will continue to do so. And again, what the president's looking for is a partner. He would like to see the Republicans move from this agenda of rolling back the tide and looking for a Republican partnership in the Congress to move the country forward. With that, I'll yield back to the chairman.
So before we go to questions, and then we run to committee because the Ways and Means Committee is holding a hearing. Both of us are members of that committee. To no surprise to anyone, the committee hearing will deal with the issue of the Affordable Care Act, which is, if you could believe this, the committee, the most powerful committee in the House of Representatives, and some would argue the most powerful committee in the Congress, the Ways and Means Committee, which has so much to do with driving our economy forward, or in this case, driving it back, has not held a hearing. The Ways and Means Committee has not held a hearing on anything other than efforts to repeal or replace the Affordable Care Act in the last 6 months and 10 days. And today's hearing is no different. It will be the same thing. So as the Vice Chair just mentioned, while some of our colleagues in Congress, our Republican colleagues, are obsessed with repealing the Affordable Care Act, are obsessed with obstructing the president's jobs agenda, this is what's been going on. As our Vice Chairman said, 8 million private sector jobs have been created in America since the Affordable Care Act became law. And if you were to take the quote of Mr. Boehner, our Speaker, in my opinion, he says, Obamacare is the biggest job killer we have in America today. Speaker said that January 6, 2011. 8 million jobs since the Affordable Care Act passed have been created. Not just 8 million jobs, but take the close to 1 million jobs that have been created in the healthcare sector alone since the Affordable Care Act passed. If it's a job killer, you would think it would kill jobs in the sector where it has the most impact. But the Affordable Care Act, our health security law, has helped create almost 1 million jobs in the healthcare sector, and almost 8 million jobs have been created in those 4 years since. I also want to mention one last thing. The launch of these exchanges, which started on October 1st, that was the guts of the Affordable Care Act, right? Because that's where millions of Americans now have a chance to get covered. Well, since the launch of those exchanges, more than 9 million Americans have gained health security in this country. More than 9 million Americans just since October 1st. By the way, and in that same time, since October 1st of 2013, slightly more than 3 months, 530,000 jobs have been created in the healthcare sector alone. So next time politicians want to stand up and make claims, whether it's about death panels or about government takeover of Americans' health care or about job killing, ask them for the facts, because the facts make it clear what the president has helped us do and accomplish, and what America's seeing in getting health security is that we are also putting Americans to work. With that, we'll take a question or two. Ginger.
The President is expected to address immigration today, an issue you've been working on. Are you confident that he could do something using the executive orders that he's talked about? And what most are you looking for in the urgency?
Well, we've had a champion on immigration reform in the president since before he became president in 2008. And so we're hoping that the president will continue to make the push and emphasize to members of Congress that we're close. The Senate accomplished a bipartisan reform which would help our economy grow, would create jobs, and would actually reduce our deficits by about $1 trillion over the next 20 years. And so hopefully our House Republican colleagues will finally let us have a vote. I feel confident that the president will do everything possible to make it easier for our Republican colleagues to finally decide that they can do something on immigration reform. And given that the president has said that he will take executive action where he sees inaction on the part of Congress and our Republican colleagues, there are many ways on immigration where the president can take action that will not only be beneficial to our economy and to people in America who are working or who are employing Americans, but it'll also be, I think, a way to help stop us from separating families who we know in the future are going to continue to be hardworking Americans and help us grow. So I feel confident that the president will give us not only a lift on immigration to get the reform done, but also use his powers to do the best thing he can, whether it's for the economy, whether it's for healthcare or immigration, as the president.
If I just can add to that, I think, as always, the State of the Union is an opportunity for the president to express his vision for our country. There's no vision in this Republican-controlled House of Representatives. I think there is a lot, as the chairman has said, the president can do if he chooses to use executive order. I think we all recognize the best way to approach the issue of immigration reform is a comprehensive bill. Set the agenda for the next decade or more. This is something we've talked about over and over again. We'll continue to talk about it, obviously. But tonight, I think what the president needs to do is spell out for the American people why we need to accomplish this, why we need to get this done. I think many members of Congress understand it, but the American people also need to understand why it's in their interest to see that we have comprehensive reform, and the president will have an opportunity to do that tonight.
Did Secretary Lew at all touch on the debt ceiling, which is coming up at 88 moved his deadline back? What did he tell the conference about that?
The Secretary Lew did discuss the need for us to pay our bills and the importance of not playing with fire when it comes to the markets, interest rates, and the livelihood of Americans who are working and paying their bills. And so he made it very clear that the president's position remains the White House's position, and the secretary articulated once again. We don't negotiate the livelihood of American families to extract concessions that have nothing to do with moving the economy forward. And so I think the secretary was very explicit that we have an approaching deadline to have Republicans and Democrats alike in Congress authorize the legislation that lets us pay for the bills that members of Congress in the House and the Senate, Republicans and Democrats, authorized through their yes votes. And so the president's saying, as the chief executive, I can only administer the laws. If you passed a budget bill that required us to invest here or invest there, and we now have to pay the cost to those American workers and American contractors who did the work, please, Congress, don't tell me that all of a sudden you're going to hold us all hostage so you can extract things like repealing the health security law that's helped over 9 million Americans in the last several months. And so we think that we can get this done working with the president, but it's good to know that we hopefully will not have this game of Russian roulette that at least the president and Democrats won't engage in as we try to continue to move the country forward.
There was one other point, Javier, that Secretary Lew made as well, is that because of the timing of the year, and I don't pretend to understand all the nuances to this, you may have to follow up yourself with the Secretary, that he has limited extraordinary means by which to extend the debts, the need for lifting of the debt ceiling. So I think that demonstrates again an urgency that the 7th is not only an important date, it may be a critical date in terms of that. But maybe more to the American people. Can anyone explain to the American people why it's in their interest to see interest rates rise? Because that would be one of the more immediate results of failing to meet our debt obligations. If you fail to do that, it costs more to borrow money. It costs more for the government to borrow money, and it costs more for the average American to borrow money. How is that in their best interests? I don't know. I fail to understand that.
Take one or two more questions and we'll run.
Just in the last hour, Speaker Boehner told reporters about the idea of more executive action from this president, that the idea that he's going to do things alone, he has to be reminded about the Constitution. Speaker Boehner saying, we're not just going to sit here and let him trample all over us. At what point is executive action actually going against the Constitution and taking part in Congress? And how do you respond to what this president's doing and not being accused of that?
The president's not trying to act alone. When the president talks about working with Congress to increase the minimum wage, the vast majority of not just members of the Senate, not only the large number of members in the House and virtually every single Democrat, but virtually all Americans are with him. Of the 300 plus million Americans in this country, by a wide margin, 70, perhaps 80%, Americans say we should pay people for working hard. And so for our Republican colleagues to think that the president is trying to act alone when he says, let's increase the minimum wage, wow, they've not been on earth for long enough to know what's going on.
But he's acting alone in one sense.
He's working with Congress. He has said, let's pass the legislation that's been introduced in the Senate and the House to pass the minimum wage. But should he have to wait because of the intransigence, the obstacles that are placed by Republicans, or because the Republicans would prefer to shut down our government? I think he's saying, I'll do what I can as the executive of this government, but I'll try to do as much as I can working with Congress. I heard a report earlier this morning that the president in his State of the Union of last year said he gave us 41 different items to work on to pass that would be helpful to the American people. Of those 41 different tasks that the president, who had just gotten reelected by a wide margin, put before Congress, how many of those 41 items did Congress get to work on and pass? Two. If we want to see another year of do nothing because Congress is unwilling to act or wants to obstruct or wants to shut down, then we won't get very far. I think the president says, let's go as far as we can, and where Congress finds it difficult to walk and chew gum, he'll do what he can. So it's not a matter of trampling. It's just asking Congress to walk and chew gum at the same time. Most of us believe that we were hired as members of Congress to be able to at least walk and chew gum And so there's no trampling here. There's no acting alone. The president is asking Congress to work with him. But he's not going to wait forever because you got this heavy anchor of inaction in Congress weighing the country and our economy and job creation down. We got to get to work.
Can I ask you, could you just repeat the question for a moment?
He's asking for a response to Speaker Boehner saying, we're not going to sit here and let the president trample all over us.
And we're going to sit here and do what? Nothing. Because that has been what the agenda of the Republican Party has been, unfortunately. Nothing. And what the president is doing here with this executive order is leading. He's saying that this administration will not be complicit in holding back middle-class security for this country with federal contractors. That's what the president is saying. It's not a panacea. This is not the fix we're looking for, but he's leading by example, sending a message to Congress that we need to raise the minimum wage for all Americans. He's sending a message to states, you need to raise your minimum wages. In much the same way, when he led the country in terms of the Dreamers on immigration reform, he helped bring back that issue to the forefront by, again, not a panacea, but helping to move the agenda forward. That's what the president's job is. He's not trying to abrogate the Constitution. He's not trying in any way to be in violation of that. He wouldn't do that. What he's doing is trying to lead, and I'm impressed by that.
We'll take one last question, and then we'll move on. Yes.
I'm curious whether you're getting a sense in the caucus about where members stand on the Farm Bill, the conference report that's supposed to be on the floor tomorrow, particularly in regard to the volume of cuts to SNAP.
I think in this case, what you're going to find is both Democrats and Republicans will be on both sides of this one. Some members are going to support it, others will not. And in a way, it's the product of quite a bit of work that was done among the leaders of the conference committee that tried to get something done. Some progress was made. Some reforms were added to the Farm Bill that avoid some of the outrageous and unconscionable spending that goes on through subsidies for people who have nothing to do with agriculture or growing things, who get write-offs as a result of some of these programs in the Farm Bill. At the same time, we're talking about millions of Americans who are going to be left without food on the table or enough food on the table as a result of this. And it was going to be even a worse cut for the nutrition programs, but they reduced it. But it's still at a time when a lot of Americans are still struggling, not the kind of thing you want to see. So I think you're going to see members on both sides of this. And if I can, before I ask the Vice Chairman for any comments, can I just say one last thing? My understanding is that Speaker Boehner, with regard to the question about not being too happy that the President says he's going to try to do what he can as the President of the United States, when Speaker Boehner essentially says that, it boggles the imagination that the leader in the House of Representatives prefers to have a president who will do nothing and twiddle his thumbs while he waits for Congress to act. And my understanding is the actual words used by Republican Speaker John Boehner were, if the president tries to act, he will hit a brick wall, that the Republicans are going to be a brick wall. As the Vice Chairman just said, that's sort of what we've been up against for the last few years with Republican leadership in the House of Representatives. This Republican Congress has put up a brick wall to Americans trying to get back to work, a brick wall to Americans who are trying to see a decent wage and see an increase to the minimum wage, a brick wall when it comes to securing affordable health care and not having to worry about a child who has asthma not being able to get covered through insurance, a brick wall. I think the Speaker spoke very, not just eloquently, but honestly, when he mentioned that Republicans have been acting like a brick wall. We don't need brick walls in front of the American people. We need jobs. We need health security. We need good opportunities for schools. And so the last thing we need is brick walls. But you know what? We can pull out some sledgehammers and get some work done if we need to, because we got to get things done for the American people. It's time to get to work, whether it's a brick wall we have to tear down or a wall of injustice or a wall of inaction or a wall of shut down government. It's time for us to act. And let me let the Vice Chairman close.
And I'll be very brief. I am also grateful to those, in particular, Colin Peterson, who negotiated this bill on behalf of our caucus. But I will also say, from what was a disastrous bill of looking at a $40 billion cut to the SNAP program, I am grateful that it's not a $40 billion cut, but it is an $8 billion cut over the next 10 years. And Democrats are not for worsening, if that's the proper word, making more worse the issue, the reality of hunger in our country. We're trying to lessen that. So for me, this is an important and very, very, very critical and important issue. I will not vote for this farm bill, but I do recognize that there are good aspects to it, and many of our colleagues have worked very hard and diligently to ensure that their interests for their states have been met, and I respect that. But I sadly say that I will not vote for this farm bill because of these cuts.
Thanks all very much.